Hi, this is Nathan Helms, and just to remind you guys, I am recording my temperatures in the Fairbanks area. So, looking at the Fairbanks air temperature recorded by NWST, and then looking back on my week 3 recorded data, I seem pretty well in margin of what they had. I'm recording up in the hills, so I tend to be a little bit higher, whereas I would have an average of negative 29.8. They tended to have an average of somewhere around negative 40. So sometimes there's quite a bit big a difference. On other days it wasn't so much, but for the most part I was quite a bit warmer. Looking at the weather patterns for the week, you can see that there was really dominant high pressure systems over Alaska during the beginning of the week, with a low pressure system down building beneath in the Gulf of Alaska. Then, as days went on, they predicted that the low pressure system would move up into Alaska, thus displacing that high pressure system. And it seemed to be the case as the week went on. Their prediction held true. And if I recall, the skies kind of became cloudier and it began to snow that week, which is indicative of a low pressure system coming into your area. Here's what the base averages were for Anchorage, Craig, Wasilla, Fairbanks, and Kotzebue during that week as recorded by the NWS. And we were supposed to use these this week to kind of gauge if we went with persistence, forecasting, or other things, how far off we'd actually be from what the weather turned out to be. So going over to my data recorded from this week for the lab, I had to begin with persistence forecasting, which is if the weather's 35 today, it's going to be 35 tomorrow, so on and so forth. So basically, Sunday's forecast for Wednesday and Saturday would be what Sunday's weather was, so 35 degrees in Craig, and continue on along. So it's 35 in Craig, it's negative 2 in Anchorage, it'd be negative 14, negative 40, negative 5 for all of eternity if you kept the same persistence measurement. And as you can tell, especially in Alaskan weather where there's a whole bunch of the temperature swings, I can get quite a ways off. Then going down to my, well, I guess I can just show you now. It started with Anchorage had some of the higher, along with Wasilla, errors, where if we were to keep persistence, you'd be 32 degrees and 47, all of these high numbers off. So you can tell you'd get in a hurry, or get in trouble in a hurry using just persistent measurement, or persistent method of forecasting. In Craig, it wasn't that bad of a difference, so it tends to work in some areas for a short amount of time. You only had 3 degrees off and 8 degrees off, which would be an A and an A minus on the scale of forecasting. The next method we used was climatology, which was take the average and apply that, so or the mean temperatures, and say, well, that was going to be what the temperatures were for the rest of the week and all of that. So as you can see, the mean temperatures were 35 degrees for Craig, 17 for Anchorage, 16 for Wasilla, negative 7 for Fairbanks, negative 3 for Kotzebue. And so a climatology for Wednesday or Saturday, it would be the same. It would just be those values over and over again. And with that, we didn't get into as much of trouble. Once again, 3 degrees off and 8 degrees off, although they were negative this time with Craig. And you can see those high values that we had as errors in Anchorage and Wasilla were reduced considerably from negative 23 to negative 4, negative 32 to 13, negative 37 to negative 7, and negative 47 to 17. So we turned these F's into an A, another F, but not a severe, an A minus, and another not a severe F. So quite a big turnaround. Same for Fairbanks. We took 2 F's and turned them into an A minus and an F, but a smaller F. And in Kotzebue, the data wouldn't go into this table, even on the shipped out fixed one that Kit Series sent out, so I wasn't able to do that. But I was able to calculate the error in the climatology forecast, and that came out to 8 and 10 degrees, both A minuses. For those of you who were confused about the A minus F system, it's basically if your forecast was within 5 degrees of the estimate that, or of the actual temperature, then you get an A. If it was within 10 degrees, you get an A minus, and outside of 10 degrees, you get an F for your forecast. So for all of the ones that I didn't mention, here's what they got. So as you can see, Craig had an excellent forecasting off of persistence and climatology methods. They had A's and A minuses all down. Anchorage, Wasilla, and Fairbanks didn't do too well. Kotzebue only had one F, so that was decent. So I decided that both of these were equally inaccurate. Eventually you're going to come across a time where the mean is nowhere near and persistence is going to wear out after the first couple of days. So they really would give you the most basic idea of what would be going on. So I decided that Craig and Kotzebue had the best forecasts. They were the most accurate anyway, and everyone else seemed to have more problems using those two methods. This was a forecast for the daily average temperatures as recorded by NWS. So focusing on Fairbanks, since that's where I live, for Wednesday and Saturday you'd go over here and you'd look, and based off of Sunday's averages you'd go to Wednesday, and I decided this was about a 6, so I recorded that over here for Wednesdays, and then I kind of dipped, so that turned into a -7 for me. Then Saturday we can see had -7 for Sunday's forecast. Now looking at it from Wednesday's forecast, Saturday goes to a 0 since Wednesday's average is now this line. So it dips down here and we can see it's not doing too well. And it follows this lower trend that we couldn't tell was happening from Sunday. So going back to this, you can see that Fairbanks got a lot better error averages than it did in the previous two methods. Now we were entirely A's, well, A's and an A minus, and everyone seemed to do better here, with Wasilla getting straight A's, Craig getting straight A's, and on this one Anchorage would not enter as Kotzebue hadn't in the previous ones. And Kotzebue this time got all F's. So going down here, we can see that Craig and Wasilla did the best. I didn't include Fairbanks since they got one A minus, and Kotzebue really turned out to be doing the worst. And for everyone who showed skill in their things, I said it was pretty much everyone but Kotzebue, not to be mean to them, but it didn't seem to really come together for them there at the end. And I always agreed, well, I agreed with 3-day forecasts are always more accurate than 6-day forecasts under the circumstances that 6 days prior you never know what's going to happen. At least with 3 days you can give it a decent guess. And then from here we had to predict, well, not predict, but read the predictions on what barometric pressure would be and find all of those things out off of these maps that we were given in class. Well, not in class, online. So I've already cycled through these and showed you that a low pressure system was coming up through the Gulf of Alaska into the mainland. So over here is recording the lowest of the lows on those predictions and kind of mapping out where they were. and it seemed like for a large part of them, they were mostly in the Aleutian chain or up in the Bering Sea is where it started moving. This low pressure system that was going around the Bering Sea could possibly contribute to why Kotzebue had such inaccurate readings throughout most of their predictions, while Craig did not. They both were coastal cities, so they're kind of at the mercy of the sea, but Craig down in the panhandle of Alaska wasn't subjected to as much pressure changes as Kotzebue was, which really could have affected their ability to predict the weather and how accurate they could be without knowing what was coming. All in all, I enjoyed this unit and kind of looking at how the different methods of predicting the weather and how some are more accurate than other but take more effort. So it's kind of neat just to look and see the basics of how weather is forecasted and how you can do it yourself fairly easy. Um, yeah, thanks for listening.